Hi, my name is Craig Sams. I got into macrobiotics in 1965 when I was 21 years old. I had been traveling in the Middle East and the East, and by the time I got to India, I was very unwell with hepatitis and dysentery, and I discovered then that the only foods I could really eat was a mixture of barley and lassi, a sort of fermented sheep's milk, and unleavened flatbreads with unsweetened tea, and that cured the dysentery, and then the hepatitis cleared up as well. And this was against all the medical advice that said your liver is weak, so you should eat lots of sugar and simple, easily digestible foods. That led me, when I went back to my university in Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, I fell in with the 4 or 5 people there who were into macrobiotics, and I was still suffering from the after effects of hepatitis, and eating brown rice and vegetables, simple foods, sesame, tamari, made a huge difference. And in 1966, in February, with my friends, we went up to New York where we could buy the kind of foods from a company called Infinity Foods there that you couldn't get in Philadelphia. Things like real tamari and apple juice concentrate and various seaweeds. And that afternoon we went to the Macrobiotic bookshop, and they had just been busted for selling books that claimed that you could prevent cancer through diet and possibly even remedy the symptoms or the effects of cancer through good diet. The American Medical Association had persuaded, I guess it was the FBI, to take away the books, and a very sad Irma Paul, who managed the bookshop, said we could look at the books, but she couldn't sell any to us because then she'd be breaking the law. She had an injunction against her. That kind of inspired me that we were on the right track. That evening we went to a restaurant in the East Village called The Paradox, which had been opened a few months earlier by Michelle Abacera, who's the author of Zen Macrobiotic Cooking. And I could just feel the hairs rising on the back of my neck as I realized that what I really wanted to do when I graduated from college in a few months' time was to open a restaurant like this and to be in the same position as Michelle Abacera in terms of presenting macrobiotic food to the world or to the public. I wrote to the Peace Corps because I was scheduled to, after I graduated, to train to teach English to Moroccan students in Morocco, and said I wouldn't be joining the Peace Corps after all. And I came back to London, which was my hometown in that it was a fairly scattered family, but it was where my mother lived and where I came back during my summer vacations. And I started importing books like Zen Macrobiotics, Zen Cooking, or Zen Cookery as it was called, the Macrobiotic Guidebook for Living, and the Book of Judgment. And we sold those by mail order and through a few stores, including Indica Bookshop in London. In February, I also took macrobiotic food to something called the UFO Club, which was kind of the beginnings of the hippie scene. It's where the Pink Floyd and Crazy World of Arthur Brown and Soft Machine and bands like that first sort of developed their following. And so, an awful lot of very sort of psychedelically excited people were tasting stuffed vine leaves with brown rice and, vegetarian stuffed vine leaves, falafel, the kind of finger food, but not the kind of stuff you would normally get at a rock gig. Then in February, in January I had the opportunity to take over the basement of a place called Centre House in Airlie Gardens in Notting Hill. And we set up what was going to be sort of macrobiotic study center and cooking school. It very quickly got out of hand and just became an extremely popular restaurant. So popular that because it was a residential area and the Centre House was primarily a study center for radionics, yoga, and the founder of it, or the owner of it, Christopher Hills, had heard about macrobiotics and was excited to have a macrobiotic study center in the basement. But it became a very busy restaurant, and it was packed out every evening, and eventually we had to move on. And we did, but I realized that there was a big market and a big opportunity, and a lot of people who were prepared, who really got the message. And you have to remember that in 1967, that kind of a message was completely alien to what nutritionists were saying. You had Arnold Bender, head nutritionist at King's College in London and one of Britain's leading nutritionists, saying white bread is better than brown bread because it's easier to digest. You had other scientific experts on nutrition saying with the advances in nutrition that we have today, we'll soon be able to just take a couple of pills every day to satisfy all of our nutritional needs. It really was that crazy. So macrobiotics stood out for being simple, realistic, and based on sound philosophical principles rather than phony science. And that was how I got into macrobiotics and got started in macrobiotic food.
So how has macrobiotics helped you personally?
I'm 65 years old. Since 1965, when I spent a day in hospital in New Delhi with hepatitis, before I kind of just discharged myself and got a grip on what I was eating. I have never had to see a medical doctor about anything. I've had minor ailments that sort of derive from having had hepatitis, but nothing has ever, and the occasional runny nose, that sort of thing. But I've never had to seek medical advice or been that ill. That doesn't mean I never will, but at the moment, I've been luckily, or perhaps because of macrobiotics, free of medical intervention or any serious accidents.
So what is the connection between you and Glastonbury, the first Glastonbury?
Well, moving on from, my brother joined me in the business, and we had a company called Yin Yang Limited. We had Seed Restaurant. My brother published 3 issues of a magazine that was quite influential at the time called Harmony Magazine. We then opened a number of businesses. Sarah's Grain Shop, named after Ceres, or Demeter, but in Roman myth, Ceres, and the founder of the root of the word cereal. So we opened Sarah's Grain Shop, then Sarah's Bakery, and we founded a wholesaling company called Harmony Foods that had as its trademark a yin-yang sign with a leaf coming, or leaves on a branch coming up from one side of the yin-yang sign and roots coming down from the other.